Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start this Bava Metzia daf Yud Ches. We're going to begin on Yud Ches and Aleph, the second line, Ve'ela. So we were learning that when it comes to a person who makes a claim regarding a ksuba, and he says that I already paid it back, so the question is he believed. So we saw on the very bottom of Yud Zayin with Aleph that Hatayin Achar Ma'aseh Beistin. Again, this is a case, for example, a ksuba, which is a Ma'aseh Beistin, and he says, I paid it back, there was no witnesses, so his words do not mean anything. And we ended up saying that this perhaps is, again, a proof that any time you have a Ma'aseh Beistin, it's considered like there's a star there. And then we ended up saying, well, maybe that's not the case. Maybe there's a distinction if there's a ksuba, there's not a ksuba. Because the problem, as we established, is when it comes to an almana, when it comes to the time of erison. Now, we do not typically find a woman having a ksuba at that time. So therefore, how is she able to collect? How could she possibly collect the ksuba? So therefore, because of that, we said it's possible that we're talking about a situation where maybe the ksuba was actually written, and the rayas we concluded is because it says goyvas akol, you collect everything. Now, if there was no ksuba, then obviously all you can collect is mana or masayim, depending if she's a ba'ul or a basula. We would not say that she would collect tosefes unless there's actually a ksuba. So therefore, we ended up saying that perhaps the reason why this all applies is because she mamish has a ksuba. However, again, in a situation, again, we make this distinction. If there is a place with a ksuba, then only if she actually has it will she collect, otherwise not. So therefore, it would not be necessarily a raya that parati, if he says parati, that we were not going to believe him. Okay, this was part of question 10. So let's start off with question 10. We brought a raya, based in lower klum, because it says, get ve'eni maksuba go v'ksubasa, so she can collect the ksuba. So we ended up saying in the Havamina, which is where we got up to, Deim Isa de Beluk Suba, O get Nemon Litan Parua, if it was that without a get we would believe him, then Alman Erison b'may Gavya, you would never have to collect, because even if when again the man died is an almana, but his children could always say that I paid you back. Because, and then what's the whole purpose of this takana of the chachamim that a woman who is an almana collects a ksuba b'shas erison? So it must be that, again, the im isa the below ksuba neman lita in parua, must be he cannot be believed, because if he would be believed by saying parati, then the children would also say parati, and then an almana would never be able to collect. Therefore, we said from here in the Havamina must be it's a raya. The Elwa meditani Rav Chia Barami ishto arusa, and we're trying to prove where do we see a din arusa collects a ksuba in general, even in a situation where because the case we end up saying is maybe he just happened to write a ksuba, and the whole chiddush that you would collect the ksuba where it's written is because you would think maybe the ksuba is only chal if he actually marries her, but since he died before that, maybe not. That was maybe the whole chiddush. So it says, Ish darusa will onin v'matamula. So when it comes to a kohen, normally, of course, a kohen is not allowed to become tameh unless it's his zayin krovim. Now, what if it's his wife? So his wife is one of the zayin krovim. However, he could not be an oinis because as Rashi says, lo oinin ein aninus chalalav. He doesn't have the din of being an oinin with isra chilos kadashim, so he's still allowed to eat kachim if his wife would die. Also, the din of being matama mason. If he was a kayin, even though the pasuk says im ki'im l'sheiro, that means it's your wife, which means the Rashi says v'hai lav sheirahu deloy ba dain l'dikir basar. Since they didn't actually get married, he's not allowed to become tummy for her. So too, when it comes to her, there's no din of being an onen or tuma. And Rashi says, "Lamishum kahuna kaimer din kahanas musharis al tuma." Pasuk says, "Bnei Aaron v'lo benos Aaron." So what does that mean? That she's not allowed to become tummy to him? Why not? She's allowed to become tummy. She can become tummy anyway, if she's a bas kohen or a kohenes. El eina zekuka l'tamila. Rashi says she doesn't have to become tummy. Lo kohenes lo Yisraelis shemitzvahs asik b'shiva mesi mitzvah hamurim b'parsha dechsiv lo yatama. That there is a mitzvah of being involved in the dinim of velus, even if you're not a kohen. However, in this situation, it says v'im lo ratza metaminaiso al karchai, that normally we can actually metam her al karchai, and it brings a story over there in Torah's Kohanim, but we don't require that. We don't say that she has to become tameh for her husband because she's not really married, because it was only an erison. Mesa, and she dies in Yorsha, says Rashi. The Yerusha Sabal Nafgalan Misher Karavulov. That the Yerusha is connected to, again, the pasuk of She'ero, Mimishpachta Yorshaisa, V'hol Lav Sheruhu. So therefore, if she dies, he will not be Yorish her. Mes Hu Goivik Subasa. But here's an interesting point. It says that if he dies, she will collect her ksuba. Now, it said clearly this is all talking about an arusa. So again, this is clearly a raya that a woman who has gone through shas erison will get her ksuba. So he said that's not necessarily a proof that every almana gets a ksuba. Don't the kasava. Maybe again, just as we answered before, maybe the husband decided to give her ksuba b'shas erison. He didn't have to, but he wrote it, and therefore that's what it's talking about. However, if there would be no ksuba, then she would not get it, because he could tie the parati. If you want to tell me that he wrote Ma'al Memra, what's a chiddush? So perhaps you could say what we said before, but then we've already learned that chiddush from before. Mesa enu yorsha, it's tzrichale. The chiddush is that if she dies, that he will not inherit her. Maybe that's the whole chiddush. El Abaye megufa the masnisin kahader bey. Rather, Abaye, who said before, La Milsahi, who said that it's not necessarily a proof, Megufa the Masnisan. He actually learns that from the Mishnah itself. Get Mishum Dehi Gufa Kashlei Haderbe. Why? So again, Abai Gufa Masnisan Kahaderbe. He retracted. If we're talking about a case where a ksuba is not written, so the get hainu ksubata, and we say that the get is the ksuba, and therefore the husband has an obligation to pay it. Ought to what? Get mono masayim ksibe. It doesn't say the amount, that we should say that it's mochiach al chayiv, that this get proves anything. The fact that there's a get involved, how does that prove anything about the ksuba? Since the Chamim made a takana for her to collect, it's comparable, like it's actually written on the get, like it says 100 and 200. So if that's the case, litain, he should complain and say v'lema parati. He should be able to say I paid it back. Well, what are we talking about? After all, there's no ksuba here. Maybe we can say if you did pay her, then you should have ripped up the get. You should have ripped up the ksuba or whatever it is. In this case, without a bakam shein ksuba, you should have ripped up the whole thing. So Amrlan, he can say to us, Lo shavaktan, she didn't let me. Amra, she said, Be'ina ve'insuvi be, I want to get remarried. So if I ripped up the get, no one would know they got divorced. So in order to have a little rachmanas on my ex-wife, I decided to allow this get to remain and not to rip it. And therefore, because of that, now all of a sudden I'm going to have to pay for this ksuba? Doesn't make sense. Why should I have to do that? He should be believed that he already paid it. Maybe you should have torn it and then written Agve Gita Danan Dikarnuhu, that I paid up to this get and it's torn up. In other words, you could have somehow made another document or written something nearby or some document to verify that a get was given so she can get remarried, but yet to save you from having to pay again. Lo mishum de Gita Psulahu, And you should say, not because the get is puzzle, so she's not going to collect the second time. Why doesn't he actually say that? Otu what? Kol de magve bebedina got magve. Does anyone who collect, do they always collect in the Beis Din? So what does it mean? He couldn't write this, as he did this without a court that gave this option. So he'd be believed that he already paid. But no, since he's never believed, even without a ksuba. So that's how we understand it. You say, oh yeah, he should have written this. How is he supposed to have written it? He couldn't have written it. So none of this could have taken place. And therefore, the fact there's a get, so he should have this taina, but since it must be that he's never believed, even without the ksuba, because otherwise he should be able to say parati. So it must be that he's not believed. So umaskana. Question 10. The lekel member to get b'makom ksuba koi. You can't say the get is b'makom ksuba. Dihi lo titin gita v'yimishum diachal mikre michtav agabah dekashahu ina kol goyim bebeis din. So if you can say, oh, you could have ripped it up and something, so it's not always collected. It's not always done this way in Beis Din. So therefore, because of that, apparently he should have a claim to be able to say I paid it back. But the fact is, we say that he doesn't, and therefore lo merklum. But again, that's the whole notion behind this, is because technically he could have a valid claim, even with a get shelo b'makom ksuba. He should always be believed to say parati, because and if that would be the situation, then he would be able to get away with it. But that's the reason what he's saying, again, in support, that when he said this, the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, lo merklum, you can't do so. And because it's considered command nukat shtar b'yadidami, even though there may not be a ksuba, it doesn't make any difference. Whether there's a ksuba or not, he's not going to be able to make this taina. Okay, let's see if there's a question over here. That's it. Me'ez Mishnah Havia b'Gemara Raya the Hatoy Nachar Ma'aser Beis Din Lo Omer Klum L'Gabi Isha Shehi Roitza Ligvos as Amois Shel Ksuba V'Yesh Rak Haget B'Lo Ksuba Shehi Choy Ligvos as Amois. Okay, sounds like a pretty good answer. Let's see question TA3 if he fleshes out a little bit differently. Havim Mishum De'ari B'Makam Shein Koisim Ksuba. The Hasam get Hainuk Suba. Maskan Mishum the Hatoyin Achar Ma'aser Beis Din Lo Merklum. Okay. Alright. Again, the question was, Haitzi get the Eni Moksuba Goiva Ksubasa. Without a Ksuba, she can still collect a Ksuba. So why can't the husband Toyin Parati? So either he can't say Parati because it's a Makim She'en Kaisim Ksuba. However, maybe in a makam sheet that there are ksubas that he could say. That was the whole thing. And we said no maskana. It's just pashut because we say toyin achar ma'aser beis din lo omer klum. That it doesn't make any difference. He's not going to be believed. Okay. Let's see the next mission. Says Mastis. Matzah giti nashim. A person finds a get on the ground, or shchurei vadim, or document proving that this guy is free. Daidaki, a will. Matana, some document about a gift, the shavorin or receipts, harizel will yachzer. You cannot return it. Why? Shani oimer, because I'm concerned to say the ksubim hayu. Yeah, it was written validly. But it was never given. So therefore, maybe a person, for example, wanted to divorce his wife and he had to get written, but it doesn't mean she's divorced. He has to have the custom of an usnah. He has to give it to her. So if the get wasn't given, so that you're just going to cause problems if you give her the get. Right, and she's not really divorced because the husband has to give the get. So, and this is why all these other cases as well. Now it says the Gemara Taima de Nimluch Sholitna. The whole reason why is because maybe the guy changed his mind, which is mashma homer tenu. What if the guy says, "Oh, you found it? Great, give it." So noisnin. So in that situation, when it comes to all these different documents, then it should be given. Even if it took place much later, we found this document a few years after it was written. So the question is, is that in fact the din? Or minhu hamevi get. Let's say you found a person has a get. The avani menu gets lost. So matzal altar. If you find it right away, kosher, because you could assume that that's your get. Of course, there's names on it, but there could be multitude of people with the same names. Ima apostle. So we see that if it's bisman meruba, we do not want you to give it. Now our Mishnah is mashma. Even if it's bisman meruba, you find it, it doesn't make a difference. You can still give it. So what's the difference? So Merabu Kasha, Kam Makam Shasheres Mitsuyas, Kam Makam Shein Hasheres Mitsuyas. This is Gemara we had elsewhere in Gittin. It depends about the element of caravans. What does that mean? So let's first of all, Rashi says like this. Rashi says, Shuvi Chayesh that Shishamoisehen Shovin. Adam Acher Nafal. Someone else had the same name, and that get fell. So it may not be this guy. It has to be Kasalo Shema. So the Gemara explains that Kadesh Taver Shayara, the Tishra, that there could be caravans coming back and forth. There's a lot of traveling from one city to the next. Because if there's so many caravans, so it's very possible that it could have fallen from a different caravan. So basically what we're saying is like this. When do we say it's possible unless it's an altar? When do we say Achar Zman, it's okay? If there's very little traffic. You live in this one-horse town, and there's literally one caravan that leaves once a month. No one ever comes or goes. So therefore, that get that fell in the middle of the street must have come from you. However, if you're talking about a place, but Makam Shesharis Mitsuyas, you're in Grand Central Station, so there's constantly thousands and millions of people all over the place. So therefore, there's a greater likelihood that this may not be your get, and therefore, unless it's an altar, it fell down like you. Gemara discusses elsewhere. What does an altar mean? But let's just say within a quick time frame, it could be that that's not your get. So that's how we answer it. The Gemara then says, even if we're dealing with a place where there's a lot of traffic, it has to be that you have two people who have the same name in the same city. The evil Temahachi, if you don't say that, Kasha Rabba Rabba, there'll be a stira. The Hugita, there's a story of a get. The Ishtakach Beidina, the Rav Huna, the Haviksibe, Bishviri Masa, it was written regarding this particular city, the Al Rachis Nahara, which is by this particular river. So this is where this get was lost. So on this, Amarav Huna, as Rashi says, but Makam Shuhu Yoshev, this is the place where he was sitting, Vidanu, B'taych Shakor Gil, and Etzel Ladoin, Tabili Makam Shishis Matsuyas Sham. So the fact that this is like a base, then this is a place where people travel. So this is a city, this is a place where the get was lost, is Makam Shishis Matsuyas. So it's a Makam Shishis Matsuyas, and it's L'achar Zman, so L'chaira, we would say it would not be good. So let's see what Rav Huna says. So Rav Huna, as we continue to Chesed Beis, Chashinan l'shnei shvirei. We're concerned that there's two shvirei, two of these cities. Al bi sheba echad lefanenu, even the one that's coming in front of the Amr Mimenu Nafal fell for me. Uploini haya mishalchal ishti, and so sent it to my wife to get divorced. V'yaydimanu she'in sham shviri. Sham shviri is not another shviri. Shnei nashim sh'shein shavim, which basically means two people. It's not the city. It's the two names of people are not the same. Chayshinin shem shviri acheres yesh. The Yeshua Yosef ben Shimon Acher. Maybe there's another Yosef ben Shimon. V'yermali Rav Chistel around b'puk ayin ba. Go and investigate this matter. The Orta boy minach Rav Huna nafik dak. He went out and he investigated. V'yashkach detnan kol ma'aseh beistin harizeh yakser. That says that when it comes to any ma'aseh beistin, which we could get, so then harizeh yakser, you can give it back. Now v'hal beidin the Rav Huna the chimakam sheshus matsuyas dam, as Rashi said, that because it's a beistin, people are constantly going back and forth. The kapashit Rabban, he answered the yakser. He ended up saying that you could give it back. How could he say you give it back? Well, if it's Sheres Mitsuyas, So because of that, you should not give it back. Alma, it depends. It's totally on two things. It has to be that there is another person with that exact same name in the same city, and also has to be Shesheres Metsuyas. However, if it's lacking one of those two, then we're going to say that it's definitely going to be your get, and therefore you could use it, we're not concerned. Avad Rabba Uvda. So Rabba, in fact, did a psak like this, Bahu Gita Dishtakach Be Kisna, regarding a get that was found in a house with flax, the Pomadisa Kishmaise, just like the Sugya, which, according to this, L'chara means, says Rashi, Dev'inan Tarti, you would need two things, V'hacha Chadahu Dahavi V'achshrei. In this situation, this place where there was flax, so this only had one of the two criteria, and therefore it was okay. The only time it would be a problem is if there would be two problems. It's a lot of movement, Sheres Metsuyas, and two people with the same name. Ikad, some say with a different twist. Some say Heichadim Zabne Kisna. It's a place actually where they sold flax. Vushul Huksaku, and this is in a place. So if it's a place where they have a flax house, very few people go there. So therefore, it's lacking that element. Or we're talking about a place where you sell the flax. So it's possible it's because a lot of people buy it there. So there could be a situation of Sharyata Matsuya. However, if they don't have the same name, so that's the reason why. Some says Heicha de Taru Kisna. Actually, it's a place where they soaked flax. The Avagav de Huksaku, even though maybe there were two people with the same name, but the Shchicha Shayaros, it's a situation where it's not Shchiach Shayaros. So Rabbi says that you need both variables to not return it, but with one, we do return it. That's the Shita of Rabbi. However, Rav Zera disagrees. Rav Zera Rami, he has a stira. Mastisin Abraisa. He has a contradiction. Rami is usually by psukim, which is interesting. He asks a question, Mastisin Abraisa. Umashani, and he answers Tanan. Umashani. So Tanan, what's the stira? Maybe get ba'avadi manu. You find a get that you have a get and you lose it. Matzel alter kosher. Mimla apostle. So what do we see? We see from here la'achar zman the get is puzzle. Urmin hiel frekti gemara matzah get isha b'shuk. If you find a get of a woman in the marketplace, if the husband admits and says, yeah, that's right, this is the get, Yaksel Isha can go give it back to her. Ain't habal moida. If he doesn't admit, he says, what are you talking about? I don't have this is not correct. Well, Yakser. Well, then no one gets it. Katani mi is, but what do we learn? If the husband does agree, it's mashmi Yaksel Isha befil is maruba. It doesn't say when he's believed. It's if he says, yes, I do have a get, thank you for finding it, then you can give it even with man maruba. So that's the stira. Mashani and Rav Zer answers the stira and says, Kam mochon sheres matsuyas, the kam mochon shen hasheres matsuyas. Really the same thing. That is all totally, again, if it's sheres matsuyas, so then the din is that, no, we're not going to give you back this get. However, it's a place, b'makom shen hasheres matsuyas, then we will give you the get. So some people say that we're talking about a situation where there's no chazaka. Also, there's no chazaka of these two people in the city. That's when you shouldn't. That's when you don't give it back. Behind the Rabbah, and maybe Rabbah actually does not disagree with Rabbah, and he holds that you need both variables. It's possible that Rav Zera says that even if one, according to the second possibility, all you need is one. Namely, even if it's not huksaku, we're not going to return it. So it doesn't make any difference. All told in Sheres Metsuyas. So it's Sheres Metsuyas, you'll never give it back, even if there aren't two people in the same city. So Bishlam Rabbi, Rab Zera, I understand Rab, again, this is the second Lashon. Now Rab and Rab Zera are basically giving similar answers, but according to the second shot, Rab holds you need both variables to not return it. Rab Zera says it's all telling Sheres Matsuyas. Now I understand Rab doesn't want to say Rab Zera, Mastis and Olimale, Lakshuye. He felt that it's stronger to ask there. El Rab Zera might tell Malamer Karabba, so Amalach, Mikatani Ha'oimer, Tenu Noisnin. Yafilazman Maruba, does it say that give it back? But it's mashma even after Zman Meruba. It doesn't say that. That's a diak that we're making up. Dilma ha'omer tenu noisnin, when it says give it, l'oilam k'dekayim altar. Maybe it only means now, only right away. In other words, it may not necessarily even be a stira. Who says that when it says that you can give it back, it means at any time you feel Zman Meruba? Maybe all it's coming to tell you is give it back only if it's an altar. But if it's Zman Meruba, you don't. According to the Mandir who says, according to Rav Zera, that when all you need is Sharis Mitsuyas, that you don't give it back. The Afghan of Luhuksakushne Yosef ben Shimon Upli Rabin, he disagrees. But my Kamiflagi, so what exactly is this machlokas? What exactly is this machlokas? Whether you need both variables or all you need is Sharis Mitsuyas. So Rabbi Savadik Tani, Komasa based in Harazay Yakser, it says you always give it back. What does that mean? We're talking about there's a beis din. Now a beis din, as we know, beis din is b'makoim or kim makom sheshnas mesuyas. So it's clearly talking about any ma'isa beis din. Well, ma'isa beis din is a place where there's people constantly going back and forth, and nonetheless, it still says, harizeh yachser. Now v'hu shehuksakulo yachser. The only time you don't give it back is if there aren't two people in the same city with the same name. Lo huksaku yachser. So we see pretty clear that, again, we're talking about a beis din. Ma'isa beis din is sharis mitzuyas. So there's sometimes still that yachser you can give it back. Now, according to Rav Zera, he says that you would never give it back. So Rav Zera he'll say mikatani kol ma'isa beis din shenimsu bebeis din. It just means it was found. Kol ma'isa beis din yachser katani. Maybe it was found outside of the beis din. So therefore, maybe it's talking about a case where it's not sharis mitzuyas. So it's not necessarily a raya that we're talking about a case of sharis mitzuyas. Therefore, otherwise it would be a kasha on Rav Zera, according to that second lashon. Question 11. Matzah get isha ubal moida, the husband admits, be'elu ufanim yachser le'isha alib de kolyama. When would you give it back? So one answer is if nimsal altar, it was found immediately, or nimsal achar zman, he found it later, but makam shein sheres mitzuyas, in a place where it's not there's no caravans. V'lohuksaku ben Yosef Shimon be'ir. You could really just stop there. And it says, and also there's not two people in the same city with the same name. Okay, that was question 11. Okay, let's continue. Rabbi Yomi Omer Kagoin, totally different answer. When do we say sometimes it's given back? Amri Edim Ma'olam Loichasamnu Ela Al Get Echad Shel Yosef ben Shimon. We're talking about where witnesses actually come and say, we only signed one document with the name Yosef ben Shimon, and those are my signatures. So therefore, obviously, this is the only get. So he hakim al member. What's the chiddush? Madatem alechush dilma isrami shma kishma edim keedim kamashmon. Maybe the same names of the husband and wife, and there's also the same names of the witnesses, but they're not the same people. This happened to be coincidental that there's a second get where it's completely a different husband, it's a different wife, and totally different witnesses, but they all bear the same name. So kamashmon, that much we're not going to go. Rav Ashi Amar, he says another possibility. When would we give the get back? If there's a little hole, and this is what sometimes we do. I used to be involved in Gittin, and after the sofer writes the first line of his 12 lines of the get, you can go to the bathroom, whatever it is. He makes a little hole in the paper above one of the letters, so this way there is a nekev, and therefore that's a siman muvhak, in order to be able to demonstrate that I know for sure that this is the same get. The davka besad ois ploinus, that's only if it's opposite a particular letter. Well, nekev ba'alma, just some random hole, low, because that is only a regular siman. That's not a strong siman. That's not a siman muvhak. For me to know it's there's a hole above the letter gimel is a pretty strong proof that it's 100% the right get. If I just say there's a hole in the paper, a lot of documents may have holes in them. Rav Ashi Misafkale, Rav Ashi, who posed this, said he's unsure whether or not simanim idaraisa idarabanan. When it comes to a siman, simanim, which we'll get into great detail in the second parak, whether or not that's a din deraisa or derabanan. So, because of that, says Rashi, shemachzir behen aveda, when it comes to returning a lost object, I deraisa hi v'afil b'iser deraisa samchinan a simin koldehu, or it can be relying on even a simple simin, or it's derabanan. And Rashi says v'dafka ba'aveda behefker based in hefker. When it comes to monetary things of hefker based in hefker, so maybe we can be lenient and allow an object to be given back, because even if it's not the rightful person, based in paskins that way, that's it. Hefker based in hefker. They can make everything onus. Of a b'midid isura loy samchinan. When it comes to a matter of isur, for example, a divorce document, maybe there we're going to be more strict, and therefore a regular siman may not work when it comes to a din deraisa, or when it coming to dinim of Isser. Says Rashi, V'chi tema nema hachik, saver simanim d'Rabbanan, say simanim d'Rabbanan, v'nifshad b'ayin d'lakaman la pirchahi, d'menon d'pshitale, inam m'safkali islay l'meser misfeka. So, again, we don't know necessarily, even if it is a safek d'Rabbanan, what simanim or d'Rabbanan, whether we can be lenient there. Maybe it's only when it comes to dini mumnus. Rabba Bar Chana, as we continue to Yud Testament Aleph, Ichris le Gita. So says Rashi that there was a shliach that came, and it was lost and then found. So Ichris le Gita be Rasha. Army, he said Isaman Isli begave. He said if there's a siman on it, or he wanted to check, or Tavias Eina Isbe begave, or there's Tavias Ayin. So since if you hold simanim are not diraisa, we say only return an aveda, as we saw, as this is the desire of the person. But you can't learn from dini mumnus to iser, as we said. So he said, let's say if there's a siman on it, or tvias ayin, if you have some strong ability with your eyes, says Rashi, chashivachu isle begaveh, says something chashiv to you, tvias eina makiro ani biksav yedi, with your eye you're able to recognize something about it, its length, its width, just like a person could recognize his friend with tvias ayin. So hadru nihile, so they investigated and looked into the matter. Amr loyadana imishum simana hadrua, so hadru nihile, they returned it. So, but we didn't know why they returned it. Imishum simana hadure, was because he held that simanim are deraisa, and therefore it worked, because saver simana deraisa. Imishum tavias eina hadureni hilei v'davka sermon rabbanon. Maybe the only reason why he was doing this is because of sermon rabbanon, who is extra careful. Says Rashi, the muksaklan bay, the mishani b'dibure. He doesn't change his words of inish down below. So we're not really sure the reason why that took place, but it was given. We're not sure if it was because it was a sermon rabbanon and only by tvias ayin were lenient, or maybe he holds that simana deraisa's reason why he returned it. In either regard, it was returned. Okay, we're going to stop there. Question 12. Shliach haylacha she'avan mimenu get umatzu be'elu fanim efshel haxel get alphabi shesimanim lav deraisa. So one is a siman bovhak, like a hole in a letter, or betvias eina with sumar murabanan. Okay, question TB5. Himachzir and get isha al pi simanim. Similar type of a question. Yud Chesam at Beis, Yud Chesam at Aleph. So, if it's a siman muvhak, going to karma nekaviation b'tzad ois pointis, then for sure yes, because it's considered to be a siman muvhak. However, if it's just siman, it's a suffix whether it's deraisa or derabanan. So therefore, it's not so clear what the din would be. But again, when it comes to a summa rabbanan TB5, we are going to be lenient as well. So let's see what I wrote. Zet holy imam. I'm reading siman deraisa rabbanan. Abel im yesh siman muvhak. Oh, is machzirin as a get. With dugma im yesh edim al hanekev mitzad os poni al haget. Okay. Or it doesn't mention about tvias ayin, so I don't think you needed to write that. So hopefully I got that question completely right. TA4. Lishna the Rabba Rav Zera Nechachu. Imachzirim get shenim samach m'sheres matsuyas. The Heichen Lomad Rabba the Machzirim get. Where do we see that you return again? You feel b'makoim sheres matsuyas. The Eich Dacha Rav Zera es haraya. So this again, according to him, he said it's pretty clear, TA4, good, I got this right, that he didn't want to hold it. He said because Armlach mi katani ha'omer tenu noistin doesn't say vefil zman meruba. Dilma ha'omer tenu noistin u'oilam kidikaimelon altar. Maybe only altar. That's all it means. So it doesn't say when forever. Maybe it just means altar. Let's see how they write it. Kol ma'isa based in yakser, who based in who kamakim shashuras matsuyas. However, he'll say delokatani ishtachach based in. Oh, so I got it completely wrong. I got it right then, but not now. Ela ma'isa based in dishtachach avroi. So again, perhaps we're talking about a situation. So what do they argue about? So he says, I see. This is where the machlokas is found. He'll say, Mikatani komaisi bastin. Doesn't shenimsu bebastin? No, kol maisi bastin yakser katani oyam dishtachach avroi. So actually, TA4 is that, and also, that's the how we're doichet. And we went out from kol maisi bastin harize yakser. Now, if it's in a bastin, obviously, that's kimakoim shashuris matsuyas, right? So therefore, that's the reason. Adkan.